They thought she was mad. They thought her laughter was foolishness. But what they didn't know was that every secret they whispered in darkness, she already knew. This is the tale of Amara, the broken wife who turned her pain into power and brought her enemies to their knees. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready for one of the most powerful stories you've ever heard. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, turn on the notification bell to support more inspiring stories like this one. In the lively quarters of Okorika village, where laughter floated on the evening breeze and neighbors gathered beneath mango trees to share stories, lived a young woman named Amara. Everyone in the village knew her as gentle, soft-spoken, and respectful. She never raised her voice in public, never insulted anyone no matter how much provoked. Her quiet dignity earned her admiration from outsiders, but within the walls of her husband's family house, her life was far from admirable. From the very first day she married Chinedu, Amara felt like a stranger in the home she was supposed to belong to. Her mother-in-law, Mamankam, wasted no time in showing her disapproval. She criticized everything Amara did, from how she swept the compound to how she prepared soup. But the most cutting insult was always about her inability to give birth. "What kind of wife is this?" Mamankam would say loudly so that neighbors could hear. "A woman who cannot give her husband a child is nothing but a wasted calabash." The words pierced Amara like thorns, but she would only bow her head and force a weak smile as she walked past. Inside, however, her heart burned with pain. Her husband, Chinedu, the one person she hoped would defend her, never did. In fact, he laughed along with his mother, as if her humiliation was a joke for his entertainment. Sometimes he would even add to the mockery. "Mama, maybe her time has not come yet," he would say with a smirk, making neighbors laugh harder. Amara's suffering did not end with Mamankam. Her sister-in-law, Adez, a young girl barely in her 20s, treated Amara with no respect. She would barge into Amara's room without knocking, take her clothes and shoes without permission, and when confronted, she would snap her fingers and say, "At least let me wear your things and shine outside, since you cannot give my brother children." Each time Amara reported to Chinedu, he dismissed it with a wave. "She's still a child. Let her be." Every insult, every dismissal, every act of mockery chipped away at Amara's spirit. She cooked, cleaned, and tried to be the perfect wife, yet it was never enough. Day by day, her voice was silenced until she felt invisible in her own home. But what none of them knew was that even the quietest river, when blocked for too long, could overflow and flood the land. And deep inside Amara's heart, a storm was slowly gathering. The days in Okorika village rolled on like the steady beat of a drum. For the neighbors, life was cheerful. Children played in the dust, women chatted by the roadside, and men shared palm wine under the moonlight. But in Chinedu's family compound, the atmosphere was thick with scorn. Amara felt like an intruder in her own marriage. At first, she told herself it was only a matter of time before things changed. Perhaps when she bore children, Mamankam's insults would stop, and Adez would finally show respect. But as the months turned into years and her womb remained silent, the ridicule only grew sharper. In the evenings, when neighbors gathered in front of their compounds to gist, Mamankam would raise her voice so all could hear. "In this family, children come quickly. But look at this one sitting in our house like a dry stick. What kind of wife is this?" Laughter followed those words, but none of it came from Amara. She walked past with her head bent, her steps heavy, her heart aching. And there was Chinedu, standing by, laughing with the rest as if her pain were a festival joke. Inside the house, her suffering continued. Adez would enter her room freely, wearing her shoes, her wrappers, even her jewelry. When Amara complained, Adez would shrug, "You should thank me for even touching your things. At least let me shine outside, since you are here wasting space." But what hurt Amara the most was Chinedu's betrayal. He had once been the man who promised her love and protection, but now he was no longer the husband she knew. He began staying out late at night, returning with the stench of alcohol and the faint trace of floral perfume that was not hers. The first time Amara noticed it, she asked gently, "Chinedu, where do you go every night?" Instead of answering with kindness, he flared up. "Must you question me all the time? If you have given me children, maybe I would stay home more." The words cut deep. That night, Amara lay in bed with tears soaking her pillow while Chinedu snored carelessly beside her. Her heart was breaking piece by piece, but a silent fire was beginning to grow within her. She realized that in this house, her tears meant nothing, her complaints were dust, and her silence was mistaken for weakness. Little did they know, the woman they mocked and humiliated was nearing the edge of her endurance. And when the quiet break, even the ground will tremble. It was a cool evening in Okorika village, the kind of evening when the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, and the air was filled with the smell of roasted corn from roadside vendors. Amara had taken her bucket and gone out to fetch water from the public tap at the edge of the compound. As she balanced the bucket carefully on her hip, she heard the sound of giggles drifting from beneath the old mango tree. It was Adez, her sister-in-law, sitting with two of her friends. They whispered and laughed, but their voices carried clearly through the quiet night air. One of the girls asked, "Adez, when will your brother marry a real wife? This one has stayed for years and given nothing." Adez clapped her hands in mock laughter. "Very soon, my brother has already found a fine woman in Wari town. A real woman who will give him strong children. Not like that Amara who sits in the house like a ghost." They all burst into loud laughter. The words struck Amara like a dagger. Her hands trembled, and the bucket nearly slipped from her grasp. For a moment she froze, her eyes burning with tears, her heart pounding with shame. She wanted to run to them and scream, but her voice refused to come out. Slowly, she turned back toward the house, each step heavier than the last. By the time she entered her room, her knees gave way. She dropped the bucket, fell to the floor, and pressed her palms together. Tears streamed freely as she whispered, almost in a chant, "God of my fathers, I have endured too much. They see me as weak because I do not answer them back. They laugh at me because I keep silent. They think they can replace me like an old rag. But if I keep quiet, they will bury me alive in this house. I will not fight them with fists. I will not fight them with shouting. No, I will fight them with madness. And in my madness, I will show them who they really are." Her voice grew stronger with each word. When she finally rose to her feet and looked into the mirror, she saw the same tired face, but something in her eyes had changed. The meek wife who swallowed insults was gone. What remained was a woman at her breaking point, a woman ready to fight in the only language her enemies would understand. The next morning dawned like any other in Okorika village. The rooster crowed, children carried firewood to the kitchens, and smoke rose from the huts as women began preparing breakfast. But inside Chinedu's compound, something unusual was about to happen. Amara rose early, her eyes sharp with a strange calmness. She moved about the kitchen as if nothing had changed, pounding pepper, slicing yam, and stirring the pot with her usual grace. But this time, she carried a secret plan. When the yam was soft and the stew thick with palm oil, she reached for the salt. Not a pinch. Not a handful. She poured and poured until the pot seemed more like a sea of brine than a meal. Then she smiled faintly, covered the pot, and sat back as if she had done nothing wrong. By mid-morning, the family gathered to eat. Chinedu sat cross-legged, Mom and Kem adjusted her wrapper, and Adez rolled her eyes at Amara before digging in. For a moment, silence filled the compound as they scooped the porridge into their mouths. Then it began. "Chai!" Mom and Kem spat the food out violently. "What is this nonsense? Did you cook with ocean water?" Adez coughed and reached for her cup. "My tongue is burning with salt." Chinedu's face tightened in anger. He dropped his spoon and glared at Amara. "Woman, what foolishness is this? Are you trying to kill us?" Amara looked at them, wide-eyed, then burst into a loud, unexpected laugh. It wasn't the laughter of joy, nor was it forced. It was deep and settling, and strange, echoing across the compound. "Kill you," she said between laughs. Double quotes. "No, no. I only wanted to give you a taste of what my life has become in this house, too bitter, too salty, and too hard to swallow." The family froze. Neighbors passing by slowed their steps, peeking into the compound. Mom and Kem muttered under her breath, "This woman is going mad." But Amara didn't care. She stood up, her wrapper swinging, and scooped a large portion of the salty yam into her own plate. "If it is too salty for you, then leave it. I will eat it. I will eat all the bitterness you have given me, and I will not die." Her laughter filled the air once more, chilling the others to silence. For the first time, it was they who were unsettled, not her. Amara had begun her war of madness, and this was only the first strike. 2 days passed after the salted yam incident, but the compound was still buzzing with whispers. Mom and Kem warned her son, "That woman is no longer normal. You must control her before she disgraces us in this village." Adez only smirked, enjoying the drama, but deep inside, she feared what Amara might do next. Amara, on the other hand, had grown strangely calm. She moved about with an eerie smile, humming softly to herself as if nothing in the world bothered her. But behind that calm, she was weaving another act of madness, one that would shake the compound even more than the salty food. That morning, after sweeping her room, Amara carefully gathered her wrappers, blouses, shoes, and jewelry. One by one, she carried them outside into the open compound and spread them neatly across a mat, just as traders did in the village market. "Clothes for sale," she suddenly shouted, clapping her hands. "Fine, fine wrappers for women who are loved. Jewelry for wives who are cherished. Shoes for daughters-in-law who are respected." The compound went still. Adez, who was braiding her hair by the doorstep, almost dropped the comb. "Are you mad? Why are you shouting like a market woman?" Amara ignored her and continued, calling out like a seasoned trader by one, "Get to free. These clothes belong to a foolish woman who thought marriage was a shelter but found it to be a prison." Within minutes, neighbors began to gather, curious about the spectacle. Some whispered to one another, "Has Amara lost her senses?" Others laughed quietly, saying, "This is what happens when a woman suffers too much in silence." Chinedu stormed into the compound, his face dark with anger. "Amara, have you gone completely mad? Pack these things back into the house." But Amara clapped her hands again and replied loudly, "No, husband. I am only selling my shame, my pain, and my wasted years. Since you and your mother have no value for me, maybe the village will pay me something for what I have left." The crowd gasped. Mom and Kem trembled with rage, but she couldn't speak. Chinedu, humiliated before the neighbors, raised his hand as if to strike Amara, but she only stretched her neck forward and said with a wild laugh, "Go on, beat me. Beat me here in front of the village and let them see the husband who turns his wife into a mad woman." His hand froze midair. The murmurs from the neighbors grew louder, their eyes fixed on him. To hit her now would confirm her words. Slowly, he lowered his hand, his jaw clenched in silent fury. Amara, smiling triumphantly, sat beside her spread clothes as if she were truly in the market. For the first time, the power in the compound had shifted and everyone felt it. The gossip about Amara's madness spread through Okorika village like harmattan fire on dry grass. Women at the stream whispered her name, traders at the market shook their heads. And even children began to sing playful rhymes about the wife who sold her clothes. But Amara was not shaken. In fact, she was only getting started. One evening, instead of staying in the compound after her chores, she tied her wrapper tightly around her waist, rubbed red camwood on her cheeks, and marched straight to the village square. It was there when men gathered to drink palm wine and women returned from their farms. Without any warning, Amara clapped her hands and began to sing loudly. Mom and Kem says I am barren, but her mouth is more bitter than kola nut. Adez calls me useless, yet she eats from the same pot she insults. Chinedu looks for children outside, but he forgets he is the father of shame. The villagers froze. Some laughed in shock, others covered their mouths, and a few clapped along to the rhythm. Amara danced in circles, her feet stamping the red earth, her voice carrying like a drumbeat. Children gathered quickly, clapping and repeating her chorus. Soon, the whole square was filled with echoes of her mocking tune. When Mom and Kem heard of it, she rushed to the square, her wrapper flying behind her. Amara, stop this madness at once, she shouted. But Amara only laughed and danced harder. Mom and Kem, come and join the dance. Let the village see the woman who raised a son without backbone. The crowd erupted with laughter. Mom and Kem, red with shame, tried to drag her away, but Amara slipped from her grip and continued singing. By the time Chinedu arrived, the damage was done. Men slapped their knees in laughter, women shook their heads, and the children followed Amara like a small choir. He pulled her by the arm and hissed, "Have you no shame, Amara? You are disgracing me." Amara looked him straight in the eye and said loudly enough for all to hear, "Disgrace? No, husband. I am only giving back what your family has given me. If you don't like my songs, then treat me better. Until then, the whole village will dance to my madness." The villagers roared with approval. For once, it was not Amara who stood ashamed in public, it was Chinedu and his family. The laughter from Amara's songs in the village square still echoed in the ears of Chinedu and his family. Wherever Mom and Kem went, people teased her with snatches of Amara's song. Edez could not walk to the stream without hearing children chant, "Useless sister-in-law," and Chinedu, once respected among the men, now sat quietly at the palm wine joint, unable to defend himself against the mocking grins of his peers. But the real trouble began inside the house. Amara, having seen how her madness turned shame into a weapon, decided to strike again, this time in the kitchen. One morning, Mom and Kem shouted from her hut, "Amara, are you deaf? Light the fire and cook. We need food before the sun rises." Amara strolled out slowly, stretched her arms, and yawned. Then she looked Mom and Kem straight in the eye and said, "Cook, no. From today, I retire from slavery. If you want food, go to the farm, pluck cassava, and cook it yourself." Mom and Kem's jaw dropped. "What did you say to me?" Amara clapped her hands and sang mockingly. "I am not your maid, I am not your goat. Let the hands that insult me pound yam, let the mouth that mocks me taste hunger. For this wife has closed her kitchen." She turned around, entered her room, and bolted the door. That day, Chinedu returned home hungry, expecting the sweet aroma of yam porridge or okra soup. Instead, he found his mother and sister sitting angrily in the courtyard, chewing roasted groundnuts from a neighbor. "Where is the food?" he demanded. "Ask your wife," Mom and Kem snapped. Chinedu stormed into Amara's room. "Amara, what nonsense is this? You dare refuse to cook?" Amara looked up calmly from where she was plaiting her hair. "Yes. If I am not a wife in this house, then I will not cook as one. Since you treat me like a stranger, cook for your mother and sister yourself." His face darkened with rage. "You are testing me, Amara." She stood, her eyes wild with defiance. "No, Chinedu. It is you and your family who have tested me for too long. Now you will eat your pride for breakfast, lunch, and dinner." That night, the compound was silent. The once lively kitchen fire remained cold, the pots empty. The family went to bed with empty stomachs, and for the first time, they began to feel the sting of the war Amara had declared. By now, the story of Amara's rebellion had spread across Okorika village like wildfire. Some people said she had gone mad, others said she was brave, but everyone agreed she was no longer the quiet wife who swallowed insults in silence. The real test came one hot afternoon at the village square. Women were gathered under the big udara tree, gossiping while peeling cassava. Edez, as usual, was at the center of the group, her voice loud and sharp. "My brother made the biggest mistake marrying that Amara," she bragged. "Tell me, what kind of woman refuses to cook? What kind of barren wife sings like a madwoman in the square? Very soon, we will chase her away, and a better woman will take her place." The women laughed, nodding in agreement. But just as Edez raised her chin in pride, Amara appeared, carrying a small calabash of palm wine. She had heard every word. She placed the calabash on the ground, clapped her hands, and said, "Edez, repeat what you just said. Let me hear it with my own ears." The women gasped. The air grew tense. Adez shifted uneasily, but quickly covered it with a smirk. "Ah, so you've come, barren wife. I was only saying the truth. You are useless in this house." Amara's lips curved into a strange smile. She raised her voice so the whole square could hear. "Useless? Tell me, Adez, which of us is useless, the woman you insult, or the grown daughter who sleeps in her mother's hut because no man wants her?" The crowd exploded. Women dropped their cassava, men passing by stopped to listen, and even children edged closer. Adesi's face turned red with shame. "You dare talk to me like that?" she shouted, rising to her feet. But Amara was not done. She picked up the calabash of palm wine, poured some on the ground, and declared, "From today, I refuse to be your punching bag. You and your mother have mocked me enough. If you insult me again, Adez, I will strip you bare in this square so the whole village can see the shame you hide." The women shrieked in shock, some laughing, others clapping. Adez froze, her tongue tied. She wanted to fight, but the fire in Amara's eyes made her step back. For the first time, the villagers saw Adez silent stand Amara standing tall. From that day, whenever gossip stirred in the square, women whispered, "Be careful. Don't call Amara's name. That woman is fire now." By now, Amara's rebellion had shaken the entire household. No meal was served unless she chose to cook, no insult was thrown without being answered, and no gossip survived her fiery tongue. For Mom and Cam, this was unbearable. She could no longer sit proudly in gatherings, because whispers of the mad daughter-in-law followed her everywhere. One night, as the moonlight bathed the compound, Mom and Cam sat restlessly on her bamboo mat. Adez fanned herself nearby, still brooding over her humiliation in the square. "Mama," Adez hissed, "we cannot allow this woman to keep disgracing us. If she continues like this, people will think she rules this family." Mom and Cam's eyes narrowed. "You are right. This woman is no longer just stubborn, she is possessed. And if the living cannot humble her, then the spirits will." The very next morning, before the cock crowed twice, Mom and Kim tied her wrapper tightly, grabbed a small basket, and made her way to the house of Okpoko, the most feared herbalist in Okorika village. The herbalist's hut was dark and filled with the heavy scent of burning herbs. Strange carvings lined the mud walls, and a pot of smoldering ashes glowed in the corner. Okpoko, an old man with piercing eyes and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, welcomed her. "Mom and Kem," he said slowly, "I have heard whispers. Your son's wife is troubling your peace." Mom and Kem bowed low. "Yes, wise one. She insults me, she mocks my daughter, and she has turned my own son against me. I want her silenced completely." Okpoko stroked his gray beard. "Such matters are not light. The spirits do not move unless they are fed." From her basket, Mom and Kem brought out a cock, a calabash of palm wine, and a small pouch of cowries. She laid them before him. "Take these, and more shall come if her madness ends." The herbalist's eyes gleamed. He poured libation, muttered incantations, and sprinkled powdered chalk across the floor. Then he handed her a small gourd. "When the moon is high, pour this into her food. The spirits will silence her tongue and weaken her spirit. She will become a shadow of herself." Mom and Kem clutched the gourd tightly, her heart burning with triumph. As she walked back to the compound, she muttered, "Amara, you have danced too long. Tonight, your madness will end." But little did Mom and Kem know, the very spirits she sought to summon were about to turn the tide in a way she never expected. That night, the moon rose full and round, bathing Okorika village in silver light. In Chinadu's compound, silence hung heavy, broken only by the chirping of crickets. Mom and Kem waited like a hunter, her heart thudding with expectation. Hidden under her wrapper was the small gourd the herbalist had given her. Amara, humming to herself, began preparing dinner. She moved with her usual calmness, peeling yam and slicing vegetables, while Chinadu lounged outside and Adez gossiped with neighbors at the gate. Mom and Kem sat nearby pretending to weave a basket, her eyes fixed on every move Amara made. At last, the pot of yam porridge bubbled on the fire. When Amara left to fetch water from the clay pot, Mom Kim seized her chance. She untied her wrapper, pulled out the gourd, and poured the contents quickly into the steaming pot. The liquid hissed as it touched the food, disappearing without a trace. She smiled to herself. By this time tomorrow, this woman's madness will be nothing but silence. Amara returned, stirred the food, and served it as usual. Everyone gathered to eat Chinadu, Edes, Mom Kim, and even Amara herself. The family dug in hungrily, their aroma attempting to resist. But within moments, something strange began to happen. It wasn't Amara who clutched her stomach and coughed violently, it was Mom Kim. Her eyes bulged, her throat tightened, and her body shook as if invisible hands were squeezing her. "Mama!" Edes screamed, dropping her spoon. Chinadu jumped to his feet in shock. Amara, however, remained calm. She looked at the scene before her and said softly, "What you cook for another is what your own mouth will taste." The neighbors rushed in, drawn by the commotion. They found Mom Kim rolling on the ground, foaming slightly at the mouth, while Amara stood tall and touched, her face serene. "What happened?" the villagers cried. Amara lifted the empty pot and said, "Ask Mom Kim. She knows what she put in this food." The crowd gasped. Murmurs filled the air. Did she try to bewitch her own daughter-in-law, so the spirits turned against her as Mom Kim writhed on the floor, her strength fading? Amara looked up at the moon and whispered, "The god of justice does not sleep. The trap they set for me has caught them instead." From that night, fear entered the compound, not of Amara, but of the unseen powers that seemed to shield her. After the night of the poison porridge, Okorika village could not stop talking. Everywhere people gathered by the stream, in the market, under the palm trees, the story was the same. Mom Kim tried to use juju against Amara, but the charm backfired. They said the potion was meant to silence her, yet it is Mom Kim who now coughs blood. Maybe Amara is not mad after all. Maybe she is protected by the gods. Fear and respect began to grow around Amara. Women who once mocked her now greeted her carefully, lowering their voices. Men who had laughed at her songs now looked at her with cautious admiration. Children whispered her name like she was a character from one of the elders' folktales. Inside the compound, the atmosphere shifted completely. Mom Kim lay weak on her mat, her voice hoarse, her body trembling as though invisible chains bound her. Edes no longer dared to insult Amara. She avoided her eyes and carried herself with unusual quietness. But the most surprising change came from Chinadu. For the first time since their marriage, he began to watch his wife closely, not with anger, but with unease. One evening, as she swept the compound, he said cautiously, "Amara, tell me the truth. How did you escape that charm? Why did it strike my mother instead of you?" Amara paused, leaned on her broom, and looked at him. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "Because the god I serve is not asleep. You all mock me, but haven't heard my cries. You think my silence was weakness, but it was patience. And now, that patience has turned into fire." Chinadu swallowed hard. For the first time, doubt pierced his pride. Could it be that he had truly wronged the woman he once vowed to protect? Could it be that the humiliation his family poured on her had awakened a force beyond their control? That night, he sat outside alone, staring into the dark. He remembered the early days of their love, before his mother and sister poisoned his heart with scorn. Back then, Amara's laughter had been sweet, not wild. Her eyes had been tender, not fierce. A quiet shame crept into his chest. Meanwhile, the villagers began to treat Amara differently. They no longer called her mad. Instead, they called her the woman whom the spirits defend. And though Amara said nothing, deep inside, she knew her war was far from over. The days rolled by in Okorika village, and though Mom Kim still lay weak from her failed charm, the compound was far from peaceful. Amara moved about like a queen who had won a silent war. She no longer bent her head when walking past neighbors. Instead, she walked slowly, as though each step carried the weight of destiny. Chinadu, once her proud and dismissive husband, found himself restless. His mother's sickness had shaken him, and the whispers of the villagers echoed in his ears. Everywhere he turned, people spoke of Amara's power. Some said she had eyes like the gods. Others claimed she could hear the secrets of men's hearts. One evening, he sat with Amara in the kitchen. The lantern glowed weakly, casting shadows on the mud walls. She was peeling cassava, humming a soft tune that carried both sorrow and strength. For the first time in years, Chinedu picked up a knife and joined her. "Amara," he said quietly, his voice uncertain. She raised her brow, not stopping her work. "Yes, my husband," he sighed. "I know I have wronged you. I laughed when they mocked you. I closed my ears when you cried. I even sought comfort outside, thinking you were not enough. But now, I see differently. Forgive me." Amara froze for a moment, then slowly turned her eyes toward him. The cassava knife glinted in her hand. Her smile was faint, but her voice was sharp. "Forgive you. Chinedu, forgiveness is for those who do not break the heart of the innocent. Did you not join your mother and sister to crush my spirit? Did you not leave me in the dark while you chased Ngozi?" Chinedu flinched as she mentioned the name he thought no one knew. His hands shook slightly, and he dropped the knife. How do you know her name?" Amara leaned closer, her eyes shining. "They show me. The spirits you mocked. They tell me everything. Even the promises you whispered in secret." Chinedu's lips trembled, and he bowed his head. "Then I am finished," he whispered. But Amara only laughed softly, a laugh that sent chills down his spine. "No, husband. You are not finished. You are only beginning to see the weight of truth." Meanwhile, Edez, who had been watching from the doorway, clenched her fists. Her heart burned with jealousy and anger. Once, she had been the lioness of the compound, mocking Amara openly. Now she felt like a shadow, silenced by fear. But inside, she swore to herself, "This is not over. I will not let Amara take the crown in this house. If she wants war, I will give her fire." And so, while Chinedu wrestled with regret, a new storm was already gathering in the heart of his sister. The weight of shame sat heavily on Daisy's shoulders. Once, she had strutted around the compound with pride, mocking Amara's barrenness and laughing with her mother about her uselessness. But now, the tables had turned. Amara no longer bent her head like a servant. Instead, she carried herself like a woman cloaked in unseen power. Everywhere Edez went in Okorika village, whispers followed her. "Is that not Mamankam's daughter? The one Amara exposed? I heard she was sneaking around with a man in Woolly Town. Shame has caught her. The spirits have opened her secrets. The gossip ate her alive. She could not walk freely without feeling eyes on her back." Her once bold laughter had vanished, replaced by silence and bitterness. But Edez was not one to stay broken. One night, she sat in her room, pacing like a trapped animal. "I will not let her win," she hissed to herself. "If she wants to play madness, then I will expose her madness before the whole village. Let them see she is a fraud." She began to scheme. The plan was simple. She would invite some elders of the village under the pretense of celebrating her mother's recovery. In front of them, she would provoke Amara until her strange laughter and eerie songs returned. Then everyone would know that Amara was nothing more than a possessed woman and embarrassment, not a victor. The day of the gathering came. The compound was swept clean, mats were spread, and palm wine was brought out in calabashes. Mamankem, though still weak, sat propped up on a wooden chair, forcing a smile for the visitors. Amara entered quietly, her wrapper tied neatly, her steps graceful. She carried a tray of kola nuts, offering them with calm dignity. But Edez was watching her like a hawk. As the conversation flowed, Edez suddenly raised her voice. "Elders, you see this woman. Do you know she walks barefoot at night, talking to shadows? Do you know she sings funeral songs when no one has died?" Gasps rose among the guests. All eyes turned to Amara. But instead of looking shaken, Amara smiled slowly, dangerously. She set the tray down and clapped her hands 3 times. The air seemed to still. Then she spoke, her voice low and sharp. Edes, shall I tell them the name of the man you met last night by the stream? Shall I sing the words he whispered into your ears? Edes froze, her face draining of color. The elders shifted uneasily, murmuring. One of them muttered, how can she know such things? Amara leaned closer, her eyes piercing like fire. You want to disgrace me? No, Edes. Tonight, it is your shame that will sit naked before these elders? Edezi's hands shook, and the calabash of palm wine slipped from her grip, spilling across the ground. The elders exchanged looks, their doubts turning into fear. And just like that, the trap Edes said had snapped shut on herself. The tension in Okorika village had reached its peak. The whispers about Amara's strange powers had spread far beyond her compound. Some said she was blessed, others said she was cursed. But one thing was certain, she was no longer the silent, broken woman they once mocked. The village pastor, a stern man named Pastor Ikenna, called for a special deliverance service. If there are hidden chains, tonight they will be broken, he declared. People gathered in the small church, curious to see what would happen. Mom Kem arrived, leaning on a stick, her face pale but her eyes burning with anger. Edes followed, still humiliated from the gathering with the elders, yet determined to see Amara fall. Amara entered last, wearing a simple white wrapper. Her steps were calm, but her presence filled the room. Some villagers whispered prayers under their breath as she walked past. Chinedu sat quietly at the back, shame and guilt weighing him down. The service began with songs and clapping, the walls of the mud brick church echoing with voices. But as Pastor Ikenna lifted his hands to pray, Amara suddenly burst into laughter, chilling, ringing sound that silenced the congregation. Why do you laugh, woman? The pastor demanded. Amara's eyes gleamed. Because tonight, the secrets of this house will be stripped bare. Those who mock me shall drink their own shame. Gasps filled the church. Mom Kem shifted uneasily on her seat. Edes clenched her fists. Pastor Ikenna raised his voice. If there is any darkness here, it will not hide. Spirit of truth, expose it. Suddenly, Amara turned toward Mom Kem. Her voice thundered, you Mom Kem, who prayed in secret for my womb to remain dry. You who went to the shrine of Nyoku, offering yam and blood so that I would never bear a child. Did you not say no daughter-in-law will ever rise above you? The crowd gasped. Mom Kem's face contorted, and she began to tremble. She tried to speak, but her words came out as a hiss. Then Amara's eyes shifted to Edes. And you, Edes? Did you not creep to the riverbank with Obel, the traitor's son? Did you not swear by the moonlight that you would help your mother destroy me? Edes staggered, her lips quivering. Lies, she cried. But a voice from the crowd shouted, I saw them. She is guilty. The church erupted in murmurs. At that moment, Mama Nkem fell from her chair, wailing, her body twisting as though unseen hands held her down. Edes sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Pastor Ikenna stepped forward, laying hands on them, praying with fire. The congregation shouted, clapping, and calling on God. Through it all, Amara stood tall, silent now, her face calm. The power had shifted completely. The once broken woman had become the vessel of truth. By the time the service ended, Mom Kem and Edes were disgraced before the whole village. The masks they wore had shattered. And Amara, once mocked, once despised, walked out of the church with the dignity of a queen. The dawn after the deliverance service was unlike any other in Okorika village. Word of what had happened in the church spread like wildfire. From the old men who gathered under the iroko tree to the young girls fetching water at the stream, everyone was talking about Amara, the woman they once mocked, now revealed as the vessel of truth. Some called her blessed. Others said she was dangerous. But all agreed on one thing: she was no longer the same broken wife who entered the village years ago. In her compound, Chinedu sat on a wooden stool, staring at the ground. His pride had been crushed, and shame gnawed at his heart. He remembered every time he had mocked Amara's tears, every night he spent with Ngozi, and every cruel word he had uttered. The memory of the church service haunted him. He had seen his mother and sister exposed, writhing in shame before the villagers. And at the center of it all stood his wife, a woman he had despised. Amara stepped into the yard, her wrapper tied neatly, her head held high. She carried no bitterness on her face, only a calm strength. When her eyes fell on Chinedu, he quickly rose, bowing his head. "Amara," he said quietly, his voice heavy, "I do not deserve to call you my wife. I wronged you in every way. If you wish to leave me, I will not stop you. If you choose to stay, I will serve you until my last breath." There was silent for a long moment. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting for her reply. Amara's voice was steady. "Chinedu, I was never your enemy. I wanted only peace, only love. But you, your mother, and your sister turned my heart into stone. Now you see the cost of your pride." Tears welled in Chinedu's eyes. He fell to his knees. "Forgive me." Amara looked at him, her face unreadable. Then she turned away, her eyes scanning the horizon where the sun was rising. "I will not carry hatred," she said softly. "But forgiveness does not erase memory. From this day, I live for myself, not for your family's chains. If you wish to change, prove it not with words but with the life you choose from here." She walked past him, her steps graceful, her spirit unbroken. The neighbors, who had gathered outside the compound to watch, bowed their heads in respect as she passed. Some even whispered, "The gods walk with her." From that day on, Amara became a symbol in Okorika village, a living reminder that the despised can rise, that the broken can rebuild, and that truth always finds its way to light. And though her enemies lived on in shame, Amara's name was spoken with honor. She had not only survived, she had conquered.
Subscribe for more content.